Good morning, people, and happy Friday. Welcome to the Rangers Review morning briefing for Friday, the 5th of August. I'm Derek Clark, and I'm joined this morning by Stevie Clifford from the Four Lads Had a Dream blog. How are we doing, Stevie?
Morning, mate. Morning, everyone. I hope we're more awake than I am.
Well, we'll soon get you woken up. We'll talk all things Rangers, of course. Well, I'm not quite too sure about that because I'm going to get your views on Tuesday night. And before we talk Rangers, folks, as you can see, the little ticker below, we've still got that great offer on the website just now. It's just £2 for 2 months worth of content. Head over to rangersreview.co.uk/subscribe for all the details. Okay, loads of content on the website this morning, folks. And one of the pieces on there is from Stevie himself. He gives his thoughts on Tuesday night and what needs to change going forward. I've not spoken to you since that debacle in Leuven, Stevie. What did you make of it all?
Yeah, it was a really poor performance. Really, really poor. Everything that could have went wrong in the night went wrong. With regards to my piece this morning, Derek, you know that's my second attempt to write that. Given how upset I was on Tuesday night, I had to look at it again and go again with it as such. But I thought that it's all right to sit here. You know, it's really easy to sit here and say, you know, after the fact. But I thought that team selection was poor. Yeah, I thought he got it wrong. And I thought the team just simply didn't turn up. I don't think the balance is right, especially in the midfield, which is a huge problem I think they need to address. I don't think that pulling your best midfielder and most influential midfielder back into centre back is necessarily the best thing when the midfield's struggling either. So, as I said, it's all right sitting here. You know, who am I to question Giovanni Van Bronckhorst? But he got it wrong, big style. And I would go as far as to say, Derek, that's the worst overall 90-minute performance that we've seen under Gio.
Yeah, I heard people saying that after Tuesday night and saying it's possibly the second worst after Parkhead. But Parkhead, for me, Stevie, the second half, they were much improved, albeit the game was done by then. But I think what's most galling about Tuesday night is Rangers have went and beaten far superior sides to Union Saint-Gilloise. They're well drilled, they're well organised, but they're nothing special. And Rangers were, I think, fortunate to come away with just a 2-0 loss. They did have opportunities. Of course, the boy was running through on goal. John McLaughlin saved the bacon and then Tavernier with a clearance off the line. So I think they're pretty fortunate to come away with just a 2-0 deficit.
Yeah, sadly they were. The boy actually, you know, as well as going clean through, the boy went in the side clean through as well, which McLaughlin managed to stand big for twice. McLaughlin's also made a number of saves in the run-up to the penalty decision that was given as well. So with regards to clear-cut chances and opportunities against, not to be disrespectful, a fairly modest side, we've given away far too much opportunity and far too much of the boys. I'm really disappointed on what we've seen on Tuesday night, Derek. Really disappointed. I mean, I understand that teams can have sloppy parts and you know, maybe struggle throughout at points throughout a match, but to be consistently so bad throughout the 90 minutes is why I believe that it's the worst we've seen under Gio. You mentioned in reference that Parkhead game, which is correct. The first half was very similar to what we've seen, but there was at least a reaction in the second half, which I think then, you know, we're entitled to say that overall that's the worst we've seen under Gio. But Gio, again, without sitting here like a football manager expert, Gio made a lot of mistakes the other night, which we can ill afford for them to happen again, especially in midfield. I've got a real bugbear at the moment, Derek, with his insistence on playing Glenn Kamara as a forward line midfielder. I don't think it works. I think it's a perfect opportunity for Kamara to hide, which he takes. And I don't say that lightly. There's a couple of other ones in that team, Borna Barisic, who I feel should have a spell out the team as well, which puts a lot of pressure on the new ones coming in. But if that's the worst we can play on Tuesday, it gives us certainly a bar to try and hit in the return leg. And it's not over. You know, I would put that equivalent to an away defeat in the league. And would you back us to beat any team at home 2-0 in the league? Yes, you would. So we need a real upturn in performance. We also need a different selection, Derek, I believe.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we're relying on guys hitting the ground running, which is a huge ask. But I'm of the opinion that people like Yilmaz and Ben Davies can't do any worse than what we're currently getting it. So I'd like to see Gio take the handbrake off as well. I believe that it's far too negative, or far too defensive rather. And I'd like to see us try and play to our strengths. Would Derek, something I wanted to ask you, I don't know if you share a chain of thought that when Gio first came, he was result based, which meant we were a wee bit more withdrawn as a team, tempo wise, etc. Then at the turn of the year, we had a bad run, and eventually, come April time, we let it off slightly, which I thought we did our best stuff. It seems perhaps that we've reverted back, especially in Europe. Gio seems to be tempo and performance-wise that, 1-0 defeat, we can take them back to Ibrox. It stung us slightly. I don't know if you're of the opinion as well that perhaps Gio needs to reflect on that and perhaps needs to take the handbrake off.
Yeah, there's possibly a hint of overthinking the opposition, perhaps, and making it more complicated than it was. I thought the first 10 minutes the game was there for the taking. I thought Rangers were well on top. Of course, had a number of shots on goal. They were carving opportunities. There were shots from range, of course, but the Union didn't look any great shakes, and Rangers were bossing possession as we'd expect them to do. But you're right that the tempo was way off. And I know you mentioned that the defensive midfielders, it didn't work in the middle of the park. Up front, I know Cholak's come in for a bit of criticism, but the service was pretty much non-existent for him. And people need to understand he's not Alfredo Morelos. He can't carve opportunities out of nothing. Tillman looked bright. I think that was a real shining light, but of course he faded, which is understandable given his lack of games. But I think there was certainly overthinking in terms of Giovanni Van Bronckhorst's part, and maybe that's something you'll reflect upon. Going into the Ibrox game, they can't afford to, like you say, Stevie, they can't afford a similar performance. So very much has to be taking the handbrake off and try and blow Union away from the off. But based on the two performances we've seen in competitive fixtures this season, Livingston and now Union on Tuesday night. Of course, Kilmarnock are up on Saturday as well. I'm not quite sure they can rise to the occasion and get over the line. This is a side, remember, that's got the best defence in Belgium last season. I think they only conceded 17 goals, so it suits them to come and shut up shop, if you like. But can you see Rangers going gung-ho and blowing them away in the opening stages of the game on Tuesday?
Well, if they are to do that, they need to make some changes personnel-wise. We can't go with such a defensive side. 3 defensive midfielders, your best attacking midfielder, or certainly your brightest attacking midfielder so far, shoehorned out to the left-hand side. I think that took so much away from the game. That makes me so angry in terms of, when you look back, if we had played the way we think we can and we're beaten 2-0, you'd hold your hands up and say, right, okay. But for Gio to select that and then to continue so long and not change it, not to make changes at half time, I thought was pretty remarkable. He's normally very fast.
Yeah.
But Derek, a few players have played themselves out of that team for me almost imminently. We need somebody that's progressive, somebody to set the tempo, somebody to play the ball in between the lines from midfield. It can't be so safe. If you look at the first 2 games, there's an element where teams will allow us to have the ball in front of them. So we have to get somebody that's prepared to break the lines and set a tempo to that. And for me, the answer is Stephen Davis. Certainly short term, I think midfield-wise, John Lundstrom is a first pick. And I think after that, every position's up for grabs. In terms of, your midfield partner and your one in front of him, Tillman would be the one that gets the obvious nod at the moment. But in terms of other midfielders, I believe that it's a bit of a, whoever's shown themselves first. But Stephen Davis, for me, ticks all the boxes in terms of being a progressive passer. He sets the tempo rather, and uses the ball really well, which I don't feel progressively that Ryan Jack or Glenn Kamara certainly do. Glenn Kamara gets into good positions but doesn't have any end product. And I feel that a criticism of mine with him is when the going gets tough, he isn't anywhere to be seen. So, it might be a wee bit critical. It's not mean to single him out. There was poor performances all round. When you look at the first goal, there's no way that I want to see players going into a 50-50 and dipping their toes in, which two of our players did, Borna Barisic and Ryan Jack. And then, James Sands has to go and cover, which leaves his man free, etc., etc. So there's a catalogue of errors in there that should never happen. But one thing I don't want to see when we're conceding goals is a half-hearted effort, which I felt we got. So there's a few players in there that can really be looking over their shoulder now and saying legitimately that I've got issues with staying in this team. And I think that after a night like Tuesday night, that is, that's entirely fair. But with regards to turning this tie around and going gung-ho, they will set up to break against us. They will set in. And it's exactly what Kilmarnock are going to do on Saturday as well, which is probably the best test we can have in terms of a team. You want a team that's going to sit in and set up exactly how they will on Tuesday and then hit for pace. That's perfect in terms of what we need to do. Rangers on Saturday need to go and set a proper tempo from the off. It's great saying that Giovanni Van Bronckhorst is very good reactionary, which normally he is, but I'd like to see us go from the off and him not having to change it. I'd like to see us getting it right from word go.
Yeah, Nemi 1872 comes in. He says, and you remember Kamara Masterclass is a 10v Leipzig. Yes, I mean he has the ability to
one game, Derek.
Yeah, that's the frustrating thing. Yeah, but it's the old adage: you're only as good as your last game, isn't it? And there's so many games where you're just wanting a bit more from him, and I don't think it works. And the Lundstrom playing as a sort of deep line right-sided defender on Tuesday night didn't work either. It wasn't until he was moved centrally where you get more out of him, Stevie. I don't really think I want to see him in that sort of position, especially on Tuesday night. It just takes away from his game, and he's least effective when he's out there.
I think that he's become so good and so prominent in the team the last few months that when you move him out of midfield, you lose too much, especially when you've got a midfield that's struggling to set tempo and dominate games. He's the one that you look to now that it is more or less his midfield, but he's not a rangy midfielder in terms of finding intricate balls in between and setting a tempo as such. He's your power. He's your kind of one that digs in and stuff like that. And to the boy that made the point about Glenn Kamara playing as a 10 against Leipzig and having a masterclass, yes, I remember it. I absolutely do remember it. Can he tell me any other occasion where that's happened? Because it's not a criticism of Glenn Kamara. It's just not his game, and we're playing him in a position where we have Tom Lawrence, we have Malik Tillman, etc. And Malik Tillman's looked really bright, and we forced him out the left to accommodate a guy that doesn't have the numbers statistically to back up even him playing there. Now, I know statistics aren't everything, but Glenn Kamara isn't a goal threat. So that's the thing. It's not a case of he's not good enough to play for us or whatever, but I just wouldn't have him in that position. So, yeah, he did play well against Leipzig. We absolutely can acknowledge that, but it's not a consistency with him in the slightest.
Yeah, I knew this was going to come. This comment from Graham, Stevie, after his goal last night. He said, I said 2 weeks ago to give Middleton a chance. He scored for United last night in Europe. Listen, it was an absolutely sensational goal from the young lad and a terrific result for Dundee United against AZ Alkmaar. However, you often see players like this, Stevie, pulling up trees at provincial sides, but at Rangers, it's just a different expectation level. It didn't work for the lad, and I wish him all the best at Dundee United, but I'm not for one for saying that he should have had a chance in the team.
You sum it up pretty well there, to be honest. I don't think I can disagree with any of that. And you don't get the space, and you certainly don't get the time that he had to take that ball down, etc., when you're playing for Rangers. And he done exceptionally well, and I'm a fan of Glenn Middleton. Yeah. However, we can't naively sit here and say that he didn't get given the opportunities and he didn't get a run in the team. When you look at his time under Steven Gerrard, he did, and then he stagnated, unfortunately. And it happens. He will flourish at United. I surely will believe that he will. And good luck to him. And he scored a magnificent goal, and they've got a really good result, which we congratulate them on. But in terms of whether or not he was good enough for us, we've maybe moved up a few bars in terms of where we were, personnel wise, etc. Glenn Middleton's a little bit like Greg Docherty in terms of that argument that they were really good at the time for Rangers of where we needed, but very quickly we moved beyond them. And that's not criticism to either, and I like both of them a lot. But we've got. There's no point in looking at the ifs and the buts of what just happened. We need to move on from that. It would be nice though if one of our wingers could, or one of our midfielders could show that kind of skill and direction and maybe take a shot or two though. However.
Yeah, well, Stephen Cochrane gets in touch. He says Scott Wright was the only player affected the game second half. He did have a driving run into the penalty box, of course, and I'm a fan of Scott Wright, Stevie. You know what you're going to get from him. Listen, we all know his final ball often lets him down. I can see him possibly coming back into the side on Saturday. I think Rabbi Matondo was a big disappointment on Tuesday night. Listen, he wasn't the only one, but he was virtually anonymous. Nothing was coming off for him, and for me, I'd happily bring Scott Wright back into the side. I don't know where you stand on that.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Scott Wright. I think that he's underrated in terms of what he offers. People are very quick to criticise, which I think they've got a right to do in terms of there's certain parts of his game that do need to be better. Final ball and final product, etc. I get it, but in terms of somebody that's willing to drive at a defence, take a ball on, he's certainly got those attributes. The thing with Rabbi Matondo is I don't blame Giovanni Van Bronckhorst for selecting him. I don't have an issue with that. But in terms of performance, he should have been off way before he was. I can understand why he struggled because they're well aware of him and they're well aware of what he offers. My point of view on Tuesday would be they're maybe not up to speed with what Scott Wright offers. And I would be tempted, if we're going to try and get into a lead and take a game to a team, until Matondo gets up to speed, I might be inclined to put him on the bench and then be a really effective substitute, as we've seen against West Ham, etc. If we get the lead against the Belgians, which we hope we will, then we can hope that they begin to come out a wee bit, which might be ideal for a Matondo coming on if Scott Wright's done the kind of first part of that game. So, there is also a call to say that Fashion Sakala has a right to say, why wasn't I involved the other night as well, especially if don't like to say it again, shoehorning somebody else out in that left wing. Fashion Sakala's maybe got a case to say, if I'm not getting any game time here, then my time here might be over. As savage as that sounds, he should be the one coming into that team. So he's got a right to be asking Gio, where was I? Because that's a kind of, Fashion Sakala might not be everybody's technical cup of tea, but in terms of numbers, in terms of driving, in terms of organised chaos or unpredictable chaos in some cases, he's the one that can bring that, which I think that when your performance is as bland as the other night and you're looking for something, maybe we should have looked towards him as well. But as I said, hindsight's a wonderful thing, Derek, but I do feel that, if Giovanni Van Bronckhorst makes 5 or 6 changes on Saturday, then it's entirely justified.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah, I'd have Sakala is a good shout. He's another one that performed well in Belgium, of course, where Rangers bought him from Ostend. But it's a good point with regards to Matondo. He was mentioned by both their coach Karel Gerards and one of the players prior to the end, saying he was the best player in Belgium for the second half of last season. So they'll have no doubt done their homework on him. Going into this game against, before we touch on the Kilmarnock game, Cholak's come in for a bit of criticism, Stevie. Bit of it unfairly, you could say. Mark Hateley said he was a waste of space, which I thought was a bit offside. We've got a piece on the website, folks, from David Edgar talking about that. I touched on it yesterday as well. He needs time, I think. I think he's a player that I mentioned earlier, needs service. He'll score goals, and Rangers need a predatory penalty box striker, and we've seen against Tottenham, we've seen at Livingston, of course, it was flagged offside, but he'll get goals if he's presented with opportunities in front of goal. I'm sure he'll get goals. However, what's not his game is carving opportunities out of nothing, ragdolling defenders as Alfredo Morelos does, and I think it's important that many supporters understand that, because many maybe feel that he's just a substitute for Morelos, but he simply isn't, Stevie. And I think Rangers, the other players like Matondo, Tillman, and the other forward players have to make sure that they get him in the game as much as possible. But where do you stand on that? And where do you stand on the criticism of Antonio Cholak at this point in time?
Antonio Cholak, in the games that he's played for us, has had 4 chances. One of which he had out in Sunderland, if you remember, the first 45 minutes. He took in and had a kind of fairly weak shot. Yeah. That was his first one. In terms of, he then had one against Tottenham, which he took. He had a one later in the game, which I think was blocked. And then he's had one on Saturday against Livingston, which he headed in. Nobody can tell me any otherwise that we're using that man properly. We're not, in terms of getting a decent delivery into him and creating opportunities. It's maybe twofold as well, Derek. He maybe needs to make a better run and show himself more. We saw a lot of him against us, obviously, and one of his strengths was holding the ball up and playing back to goal. He's never once done that for us yet. So we have to adapt to him as much as he has to adapt to us. Does it look good so far? We can't tell because he's not been heavily involved yet. He hasn't had those opportunities. He's not got a good touch ratio. He's not been heavily involved. So the criticism will come. That's part of coming at Rangers. But we need to be, I think we need to use the context in that, in terms of if we were sitting here saying Antonio Cholak has missed, 10, 12, 14 chances, whatever, then you could say, well, maybe there's an issue there. But we're not seeing anything of him at all. He's very low touch rate and stuff like that. So we need to learn that, and Alfredo Morelos is a freak of nature and such that he can dominate and he can do everything we want from a front man. But in terms of Antonio Cholak, he's a bit more of a big man. I'll tell you something, he puts in a shift. He sets the press really well. We need to get closer to him. We need to play off him. We start using him properly as well. So Mark Hateley is well entitled to say what he thinks in terms of a Rangers striker and what's required, because in terms of forward players for Rangers, Mark Hateley is probably the best all-round forward that I've ever seen play for our club. And I don't say that lightly. Mark Hateley was that good, but he should also know that Mark Hateley didn't start and set the light on fire. The first few months that he came in, it took him time to adjust. And it took him time to set, the heather on fire, so to speak. So we need to be a bit more patient with Cholak, but we also need to expect more from him too. He has to get himself in better positions. Centrally, I believe he needs to make better runs. And that's twofold with us using him and finding him better as well. So we can't sit here and label any criticism on the new guys because it's going to take time. My criticism of Tuesday night comes from the guys that we know can do a lot better than what we saw.
Yeah. Which leads me on, in the post-match press conference on Tuesday night, Giovanni Van Bronckhorst said that Alfredo Morelos should be back for the game on Tuesday night. Now, he hasn't played since March, Stevie. I think it's going to be a welcome return, very much as the beating heart of this Rangers side. However, I think, is it unfair to expect him just to go out there and beat Union on his own? I think it's very similar to last season. Remember when he came back to that Malmo game, he scored and eventually just sort of faded, which was understandable given his lack of game time. But as Aldo says here, he feels that we're rushing Alfie back too quickly. Where do you stand on that?
The answer is we are rushing him back too quickly. He's not going to play any kind of football at all in terms of other than training. I doubt there's even been a bounce match thrown in there, which we would have loved. If we're going to start him on Tuesday night, he has to play at least half an hour on Saturday, at least. Yeah. And then you are rushing him back. But Alfredo's so good and he's such a talisman that he would have to play some part on Tuesday. I would argue that Ryan Kent's return's equally as big. I made the point last Saturday regarding how good Ryan Kent was against Livingston in that second half. Created 3 or 4 clear opportunities, one of which we converted. The other, which Antonio Cholak scored and was in pulled back. These are clear opportunities. We need a firing Ryan Kent. But it all falls short, Derek, if we don't get that midfield blend right. If you're intent on playing three really flat defensive midfielders, none of which are going to penetrate the lines, etc., then we aren't going to have, the ball to get up to Alfredo, as we've already seen. So we need to get it right even before it comes to Morelos, in my opinion. The left side of the fence is something that needs tightened up dramatically too. So I genuinely feel like we're sitting here saying that in terms of Saturday for Kilmarnock, and especially before Tuesday, Rangers could change half of their side, and they probably should. So there's a real argument that players aren't ready to go in terms of Yilmaz, in terms of Ben Davies, etc. That was one of the questions I asked Yilmaz yesterday, and where he was,
Yeah.
match fitness wise, where he was pre-season. I thought that was a key question in terms of what have you done out back home before you came here? He's not missed a session yet. He's played in games and he's not missed a session since he arrived. He has to start for me now, Derek. I think that Borna Barisic has looked really short in terms of performance, in terms of positioning. He's looked very lost. If he's not winning 50-50s and stuff like that, then he needs to come out the team for me. Centrally next to him, I think that, James Sands has done a good job. James Sands into midfield instead of Ryan Jack wouldn't be the worst idea either. But I would like to see somebody a bit more progressive than defensively. So there is big questions around this team, Derek, and ahead of our games are coming up, especially Saturday, I'd like to see some wholesale changes.
Yeah, I think there will be, Stevie. And Ben Davies, perhaps it is.
Yeah.
The left sided centre back. I know he came on Tuesday night. Looks a tad off the pace, but again, he needs games to get up to speed. Would you like to see him alongside Goldson?
Yeah, we paid a lot of money for him, and it is going to take him time. But you're looking at it's for the whole dynamic of the shape of the team as well, and being comfortable left-sided centre back, somebody that can use the ball well. We're going to have a lot of the ball in the next 2 games. Next 3 games are all home games, so if you include that as well, he's going to be somebody that needs to use it a bit better as well, and he can be that person. So there was an awkwardness on that left side of defence. You would at least hope that being natural starters in both them positions, Yilmaz and Ben Davies next to him, that they'll bed in quickly. It's a big ask for them both. It really is. But unfortunately, instead of being able to give them time, with 5 substitutes, they both maybe could have got half an hour or even 45 minutes on Saturday and took our time to bed them in. Unfortunately, we've put ourselves in a position now where we're going to have to ask Herculean efforts off the guys to try and turn this around. But we have to set a better tempo from word go. We have to use the ball more progressively, play between the lines, and force teams. It's all very slow. It's all very organised. It's all very predictable at times. And yes, we're only 2 games in. We shouldn't be overreacting.
Yeah.
But pre-season wise, consistently, we're yet to hit the heights of the first 15, 20 minutes against West Ham. So we have to try and get there. We have to try and find that quickly.
Yeah. And finally, I just wanted to touch on this. I felt this was a tad harsh from Walter Zenga, who gets in touch. Says goalkeeper is an issue too. McLaughlin never Rangers class as a number 1. I think that's harsh, Stevie. I mean, he's the first goal. Perhaps question marks. He should have done better. However, he saved Rangers from a heavier defeat. Of course, he made the double save before that ridiculous VAR call for the awarded Union their penalty, of course, and then he had the one-on-one save as well. I don't quite agree with this. I think I'm still quite content with McLaughlin having the number 1 jersey.
Yeah, absolutely. People say to me that McGregor would have saved that goal the other night, and arguably he might have. Arguably, John McLaughlin might have saved it a second time. But I would also point out to people that without bringing up bad memories, Europa League goal close to your body, exactly the same, the goal that Eintracht Frankfurt scored in terms of being close and being like that. So an argument saying that McGregor definitely would have saved it, I'm not so sure he would have 100%. Should John McLaughlin have gone better, and should he probably be saying, I might have reacted better? Yeah, I'm sure he would. But you watched that game the other night, especially one-on-ones. He saved us twice, conceding straight goals. He's made, I think, 3 other very decent saves as well. So we need to be careful that John McLaughlin anytime anything bad happens, we don't begin to use him as being the scapegoat default. We have to change our goalkeeper. The decision's been made. John McLaughlin deserves a run at that and the opportunity to try and see it through as well. I think judgment this early is wrong, but he's still to get up to speed, match fit, and playing with a defence that's uncomfortable as well won't help him. So it's an all-round thing. I don't think the position's set in stone, Derek. I really do. There could be an argument that Alan McGregor can come back in and force his way back in. We've seen John McLaughlin play 7 or 8 games in the league winning year, and then McGregor getting back in. So I don't think it's set in stone. But if we're regarding, asking the question of should we make changes on the back of what we've seen the first couple of games, the answer for me is no.
Yeah, I totally agree. Okay, folks, that'll do us there. Before you go, Stevie, score prediction for tomorrow. What's it going to end up at Ibrox?
Well, I would love to think 2 or 3-0. I would love to just see a better performance. We need something that'll lift our spirits.
Yes.
We can do this on Tuesday. If you're asking me, can we beat them 2-0 at home minimum? The answer is yes, but we have to find it in ourselves to be a lot better, set a better tempo, use the ball better, be more aggressive and more attacking. And that's the exact same with tomorrow. Put my neck in the line, 3-0 tomorrow, hopefully. And then we'll take that into Tuesday night. But we need to find much, much, much better levels, Derek.
Yeah, listen, it's not going to be easy, and I'm sure Derek McInnes will have his Kilmarnock side well organised, and it's going to be a tough nut to crack. But Rangers need to get back on the winning trail again ahead of Tuesday night. Okay, folks, that'll do us here. Thanks to everyone for getting in touch. Apologies if I never got to your comment that you put in. Remember, just a reminder, we've got that great offer on the website, just £2 for 2 months worth of content. Head over to rangersreview.co.uk/subscribe for all the details. Joshua will be at the game for us tomorrow. He'll bring you the usual pre-match and post-match videos, so stay tuned for that. And we'll be back again on Monday to review the action at Ibrox and look ahead to the big one on Tuesday night. Until then, have a good Friday.